When I was chosen by you to be leader of this party and then afterwards elected premier by Albertans, our province was in the midst of a tumultuous political storm that threatened Alberta's very economic and social fabric. At that time, the federal NDP Liberal coalition government in Ottawa, led by then Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, and his friend, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh, they were doing everything they possibly could to choke off and ultimately destroy our province's energy and agricultural sectors.
Welcome back to the Canuck Whisperer. Today, we're diving into the biggest political story coming out of Alberta this week. At the United Conservative Party's Annual General Meeting in Edmonton, Premier Danielle Smith and her party unveiled two major policy directions that could reshape the province's social, legal, and political landscape. The first is a proposed citizenship priority law, a framework designed to place Canadian citizens ahead of foreign migrants when it comes to jobs and certain government services. It's a move that's already generating intense debate across the country. The second is a Castle law, legislation that would expand the rights of Albertans to defend their homes from intruders. This could significantly alter how self-defense is interpreted and prosecuted in Alberta. These are bold, controversial proposals, and they are being rolled out at a time when Alberta's identity, its relationship with Ottawa, and its long-term direction are all under the spotlight. So today, we're going to break down what these policies mean, why they are happening now, and how they could impact you and the rest of Canada. To understand these announcements, we need to step back and look at the importance of the UCP AGM. This isn't just a routine gathering. It's where grassroots members vote on policy recommendations, resolutions, challenge leadership direction, and send signals about what the party's base wants to see in the next legislative session. This year, the mood was noticeably charged. Delegates have been increasingly vocal on issues like provincial sovereignty, public safety, affordability, and immigration. Alberta is facing a complex mix of pressures: rising cost of living, surging migration numbers, employer dependence on temporary workers, growing concerns about crime, and long-term frustration with federal policies from Ottawa. The UCP knows its base, and Danielle Smith understands that these grassroots meetings are where political momentum is built. So when the party chooses to prioritize citizen-first policies and homeowner protection laws, it's not just random. It reflects sentiment across rural communities, conservative voters, and others who feel the province is changing too quickly.
Alberta has had a history of healthy levels of primarily economic immigrants able to easily integrate into Alberta's economy and culture. But that was upended by the last 10 years of what was effectively an open borders policy by Ottawa. And Albertans of all ages, ethnicities, and immigration history have had quite enough. We need an immigration policy that puts Albertans first. That's why our government will be taking primary control over our immigration system in the coming months and years ahead. Using our constitutionally protected provincial rights, Alberta will return to a more stable number of primarily economic migrants so that newcomers come here to work and contribute as they have historically done, while Canadian citizens living in Alberta are given first priority to the jobs and the opportunities our economy creates.
The first major announcement was a new law that will prioritize Canadian citizens over foreign migrants in areas like employment and certain public programs. Here's what the UCP says it wants to do. They want employers, especially in provincially regulated sectors, to consider Canadian citizens first when hiring. They want to introduce what they call Alberta-first labor testing, meaning employers would need to prove that no qualified Canadians are available before bringing in temporary foreign workers. They also want to re-examine what government supports and benefits are accessible to migrants who are not permanent residents or citizens. Now, the context behind all this is complex. Alberta's economy depends heavily on migrant labor, from agriculture and construction to hospitality and caregiving. Without foreign workers, some industries will literally not be able to function at full capacity. Employers across the province regularly warn that there simply aren't enough Canadians willing to take certain jobs. But on the political side, there's a growing narrative that Canadians are being passed over, or that temporary workers are being used to drive down wages. The UCP is tapping into that sentiment. Supporters of the law say Alberta taxpayers should expect their jobs and their services to prioritize citizens first. We are not against immigration, we just want fairness. But critics are worried this could create unintended consequences. Restricting access to foreign labor could push some businesses into labor shortages. It could slow down growth in industries that rely on seasonal and specialized workers. It could also delay pathways for newcomers who want to integrate fully into Canada. And then there's the legal layer. Immigration is a shared responsibility between Alberta and the federal government. Ottawa has authority over who enters the country, and provinces have authority over labor and economic policy. So there's a high likelihood that this law will spark jurisdictional conflicts or even court challenges depending on how it is written. In short, it's not a simple policy. It's a statement about identity, priorities, and Alberta's desire to assert more control over who works and thrives in the province. To fully understand the stakes, we need to look at Alberta's labor landscape. The province grew faster than any other in Canada in the last 2 years, largely due to migration, both interprovincial and international. At the same time, Alberta has thousands of unfilled jobs. Agriculture relies on seasonal foreign labor. Construction depends on skilled workers who are in short supply. Restaurants and service industries will struggle to stay open without temporary foreign workers. And hospitals, long-term care facilities, and home care systems increasingly rely on internationally trained professionals and support staff. So when Alberta says it wants to restrict or deprioritize foreign migrants, there's real tension there. It's a push-pull situation. The economy needs workers, but politically, there's pressure to assert stronger citizen-first principles. This is why economists, labor experts, and immigration lawyers are watching the announcement closely. The impact could be far-reaching, good or bad, depending on implementation.
I'm announcing today that next week, our UCP government will be introducing a new motion under the Alberta Sovereignty Within a United Canada Act that will, if passed in the legislature, instruct all provincial entities, including our municipalities and law enforcement agencies, to refuse to enforce or prosecute under the federal gun seizure program. Now, the Sovereignty Act motion will also make it clear that these agencies will not enforce or prosecute Albertans defending their homes and families from intruders.
Now, let's turn to the second major proposal, Alberta's new Castle Law. In simple terms, this UCP wants to expand the legal rights of Albertans to defend their homes from intruders. The idea is based on the concept of a man's home is his castle, a legal principle used in the United States and some European jurisdictions. What will the Alberta version include? The government says it wants to give homeowners stronger protection from prosecution when they use force against someone unlawfully entering their home or property. They want police and prosecutors to consider the homeowner's fears and circumstances more seriously, especially in rural areas where response times can be slow. This proposal comes after years of frustration over rural crime. Many homeowners feel that their hands are tied, that criminals face few consequences while they risk being charged for defending themselves. But again, there are serious concerns. Critics warn that expanding the Castle Doctrine could encourage vigilantism, escalate violence, or lead to unjustified use of force. Some fear it could create inconsistencies between provinces complicate national legal framework or disproportionately affect certain communities. Supporters argue that the current system unfairly punishes victims who are forced into desperate situations. They say no Canadian should go to jail for defending their family. Opponents worry that this law could blur the line between self-defense and aggression. Whatever side you land on, one thing is clear. This legislation will change how self-defense cases are handled in Alberta and will likely become a national conversation. When you put these two policies together, citizen first laws and Castle Doctrine, you see the broader political project taking shape. Danielle Smith is building a brand centered on autonomy, protection, and Alberta-first identity. She's appealing strongly to rural and conservative voters who feel left behind by Ottawa and disconnected from national political norms. These policies fit perfectly into the Sovereignty Act narrative. Alberta asserting its independence in areas of labor, safety, and social policy. It's also a global trend where Western governments are reevaluating immigration policies and rethinking crime and public safety. Whether these policies succeed or fail in practice, the political impact is undeniable. They reinforce Smith's identity as a decisive, assertive leader willing to challenge federal authority.